absolutely a Shazam poof calling out, asking if numbers committee is watching. She says, I'm too good. I have a hat trick. You can't stop me. Let's see. He's still down by a goal.
That's a bold move. Let's see how it plays out.
Couldn't transition into it.
Jamie with the long ball. That's going to be off the backboard. The Devil and the goalie. Enigma with the goal. That's going to be the dagger for sure. 20.
Over to Viglio from Judgmental. Viglio gets the first touch, can't get the second. Judgmental puts it into no man's land. Canadian Things there now with a lot of boost to work with. Air dribble towards that. Canadian Things with the game winner.
Ray waiting for it. Ball out in no man's land. Gets up. Gets the extra touch. Throws it through. Oh my gosh. Ray with the LOB putting in work like that's his JOB. And I cannot believe that is a one-man wrecking ball.
Watch out. Beck's really proven to be a game changer in this best of 7 here. A shot maybe coming down from Nautical, not able to read that touch from DQ though, and Ob trying to get another touch. DQ dumps it down. Don't forget, this is match point.
Welcome back to another exciting week of the RSC's affiliate podcast, ThePreJump here. This is not week 9, it's week 10. That's my bad here. Unfortunately, didn't get that adjusted before the stream, but this is week 10. We're getting into some playoffs discussion here as we're kind of rounding out the season. Prospect just ended up here. I believe Contender and Amy both have 1 match night. Chally's only got 2. Most of the other tiers have about 2 or 3. So we're really getting towards the end of season 17. Returning back, we've got the man with the food, Mr. Rob over there, mowing down what looks to be some beautiful sushi. I'm coming back as always. Joining us, we have our 2 guests here. We've got Tech 4, who's been killing it this season, and we've got Mr. Reeps on the sort of 1 seed from Prospect. We'll get into more of that later. I'm still kind of figuring it out, but we'll see kind of what goes with that here. Tech, for our viewers here, why don't you go ahead and let them know a little bit about yourself before we get really too deep into the top 10 standings.
Yeah, sure. First off, thanks for having me on. Definitely check this out as much as I can. You guys are doing a great job here, so appreciate being a part of it. Essentially for me, I've StarCraft, like semi-pro player, really kind of aged out of that game, was looking at kind of how to stay into esports, and really one of my old players turned me on to RSC. So I jumped in. I've been here about, 3-4 seasons, became AGM of Pantheon, took that franchise over. Then this is my 2nd season as GM as the Mythos. I run an esports center for a college in my normal work week, and that's about it.
Nice. Reeps, since you are our 2nd guest here today, why don't you tell our little Twitch chat here a little bit about yourself?
I've only been here for a couple of seasons. I started in 2 and then moved over 3s. I love Rocket League. Been playing for many, many years, and hopefully we get a lot better. I know Energy being number 1 team this season for 100%. We're going to win it all. And that's all I'm thinking about right now is winning.
All right. I don't know if that's my internet here, but I'm not quite getting all of the audio here from Reeps. I think might be having a minor connection issue on my end. Rob, are you catching them all the way, or is that him, or is that a me thing?
I'm also getting a little bit of lag. Every 4th word or so is coming through on my end.
Okay. Just making sure to make sure that I'm not going bananas here. But let's go ahead. We'll get rolling here into week 10. We'll jump into the AMI top 10. Well, AMI top 8 here. I'll need to figure that out at some point. Came and went. There we go. All right. AMI top 8. In first place, we've got Brass. They're 34-18 in first place here. They stayed the same. Cathilla stayed second at 30-22. Elastic moving up the charts pretty quickly. They're at 29-23. In fourth place, we've got Surprise. They're 28-24. In fifth place, we've got the Rollers. They're 27-25. In sixth place, we've got Sacrifice. They're 21-31. In seventh place, we've got Faye. They're 20-32. And in eighth place, we've got the House Salads, 19-33. Now, I know a pretty good bit about AMI here because I've been working with the Elastic team. They've been really turning things around. They 3-1 Brass 2 match nights ago. They 4-0'd Faye, who's kind of going through a bit of a rebuild last match night. And their next match night, they play against, if I remember right, it would be Rollers. So they have a really good shot here to solidify the third spot in the playoffs. When quite frankly, 3 match nights ago, they were on the outside looking in. So they've really made some solid movements here.
Yeah, I would
One
just
thing-
say, sorry, go ahead, Rob.
Cool. One thing to note, kind of piggybacking off what you're saying, is they actually have the best record in amateur in their last 5 match days at 13-7. So what you're saying is definitely true, right? They're picking up steam at the right time. But you can't count out, Brass being 4 games clear of the entire field, right? Like, even if they ended up dropping a couple series, a couple games here and there, that doesn't happen by accident, right? Like, you don't get a lead of 4 games on the field by not performing. So it's interesting to see if they can do that again in the playoffs.
100%. Tech, you were going to say, though?
Yeah, the only thing I'm going to say is, looking at the standings right now, we're going to talk a little bit about playoff predictions later on, but man, this is a really competitive tier. You see 5 teams that have a legitimate shot to make playoffs right now. Brass, of course, running away with it a little bit, but Emmy's looking good this year.
Yeah, Amy's looking real solid. I know in years past,
And if I might
they've
chip
had
in,
kind of some weird spots where they've had 1 or 2 players that really ran away with it. Seems to be so as well. Your Girl's My Side Hoe still killing it, but Raichu just put up 13 goals against Faye to set themselves apart as the best scorer in the tier. So Raichu really coming out strong. Sorry, Reeves, didn't mean to cut you off there. I kind of just went with it.
oh, you're all good. I just wanted to say that in the last few weeks, our franchise's team has been slowly rising their ranks. A few weeks ago, they weren't in playoffs, and now they're definitely in playoffs unless they do poorly. They're someone to watch out for because they've been fighting back hard these last few weeks.
And I'm glad Julian put it in there. I was mistaken. They are not playing the Rollers, they're playing Surprise, which doesn't change a whole lot. Both Rollers and Surprise are both going to be competing for that last playoff spot. But if Elastic can at least 2-2, 100%, they're guaranteed to make it in. But we'll get more into this. We can get a little bit deeper once we get into the AMI playoff predictions later on in the show here. Rob, why don't you go ahead and pop us into Contender?
In first place, you are rocking the team of this guy right over here, Tech 4. At 43-9, you have Dagon, so a whopping record right there. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Sole Possession is second. You have Ionic at 40-12. In third, you have the Samurai at 34-18. These 3 teams just kind of a step above the pack, right? They're 8 wins clear of everybody else, so that's ridiculous. Moving into fourth, you have Aluminum at 26-26, Cheese Pizza in fifth at 25-27, Drakes and Scooters tied for sixth at 24-28, and then you're going to have the Ice in eighth at 23-29, Hobo Spiders in ninth at 20-32, and in Sole Possession at 10th, you're going to have the Hippie Hunters at 19-33.
You know, Rob, as I'm looking at those top 10 standings there, Aluminum, the best team in Solar, would not qualify for the playoffs in Lunar. They're 26-26. The worst team in Lunar's 34-18. It's not even close.
So while that is true, right, Lunar is obviously going to be this bloodbath, but a sneaky thing to take out of this, right, is that if you're one of these Solar teams, right? If you're the elements, if you're ice at 23 and 29, you have a shot at winning a title. And so it's no longer about what's your record now. It's no longer about do these guys have 17 more wins and are also the 1 seed, right? It suddenly becomes if I win, I'm not exactly familiar with the contender playoff picture, but if I win 3 series, right, we'll call it 3 series, then I'm a champion. And so even if I'm 23 and 29, I got these guys in front of me, and if I can get past them, it's mine.
No, absolutely. Gonna shout out Ionic as well. Really good team. They dropped a little bit. They were kind of right neck and neck with us, Dagon that is, through the stretch. But one of their premier players, one of the premier players of the league, Nate, was on vacation last week, so they had to play 8 games without him. Obviously, not going to affect their playoff chances at all. But the difference between Dagon and Ionic, I think you can attribute to that. So I think both teams are very neck and neck.
And I
So
mean,
you got, sorry, Rob.
Yeah, I do.
Before
think
we
all
get
good.
going too hard, I want to make sure we
watch
get Reeps
would
in
be
here
between
too.
those two.
Go ahead, Reeps.
Again, I don't know if you caught that, but I do think that's one of those seasons where it can be a bit lopsided, and the match to watch will be between semifinals, the final match of the Lunar. I think that's the match to watch. Now, probably Bionic and Dagon.
Yeah, that would
If it
be.
ends up like that.
That's going to be an insane semifinals matchup, honestly. But Rob, what were you going to say there before I kind of rudely cut you off there?
Nah, no worries, man. There's to see 3 teams. I mentioned this a little bit earlier when we were just looking at the overall standings. To see 3 teams that are 8-game clear of the entire pack is just kind of unheard of, right? You might have 1 team who's clear of everybody. You might have 2 teams. You might even have 3 teams, right? But to have a gap that large, right? Like there's only 3 teams that are above 500 in the entire tier. So it's really a 3-man race. Crazy enough, they're all in Lunar, so they got to go through each other. It's going to be really, really fascinating to watch what happens and who comes out of that side of the bracket.
Yeah, fair enough. But we can get a little deeper into contender here. Let's go ahead and roll into the next. We'll go into prospect. Won't be able to go too much into prospect here. We'll just be able to go through the top 10s because we're going to be getting a little bit further into this. Top 10 standings as reported from our season 17 team standings. We've got in first place Munster Misfits, they're 33 and 19. In second place, we've got Pulse, they're 33 and 19. In third place, we've got Whiskey Business, 33 and 19. In a 2-way tie for fourth place, we've got Undead and Dark Matter, 30 and 22. In sixth place, we've got the Pepperoni Pizza, who are 29 and 23. Tied for seventh, we've got Fruit Salad and Detention Demons at 28 and 24. In ninth place, Barbarians, 27 and 25. And in 10th place, we've actually got a 2-way tie between the Beagles and the Pushwalkers. They're both 26 and 26. Yeah, I'm kind of flabbergasted that the top 3 teams are all 33 and 19, honestly.
Yeah, that kind of parity is not that common, right? To have no team separating themselves from the pack is the exact opposite of what we were looking at with Contender just a minute ago. 3 teams tied right there, and then 2 more just 3 games back. So it's going to be, again, you got a lot of quality here at the top, and with no one separating themselves from the pack, truly, it's going to be anybody's race now that they're in the playoffs.
Yeah, I don't have much to say about Prospect right now. I'll get into it later, but just to echo what you guys said, the parity is crazy. Pushwalkers finishing 26 and 26 outside of playoffs, unfortunately. Everybody else, if you win 500 or better, you make playoffs. Definitely a different sign than we saw in Contender.
And just comparing it to Contender one more time, if you look at Contender, right, there were 3 teams that had a record above 26 and 26. And if you go to Prospect, you have 9, right? And granted, there are more teams, but that distribution is just insane for both of those tiers, how they're on opposite ends of that spectrum.
For sure, for sure. And we'll
Yeah.
come back to Prospect here because that's going to be a really big deep dive for us as we really start talking, especially with Reeves here being a part of Pulse and being on that, warpath going for the chip here. We'll get to that here in a little bit, though. Rob, why don't you jump us into Challenger?
Alrighty. First place in Challenger, you're going to have both Fusion and Strawberries tied with a record of 39 and 13. In sole possession of second, you have the Jack-O-Lanterns at 37 and 15. 34 and 18, right behind them you have the Zombies, and one game back you have the Breadsticks in fifth at 33 and 19 as well. Yeah, tied for sixth, you have Tarantulas and Yig, both 31 and 21. Behind them are the Squalls in eighth at 30 and 22. In ninth, you have Shinigami, 29 and 23. You actually have a three-way tie for 10th between Leo, Toucans, and Steel at the moment. Seeing those two teams tied at the top with that 39 and 13 record, it's going to be really interesting to see one in Solar, one in Lunar, right? We haven't had that yet. So as we move forward, this might be chalk, right? You look towards the playoffs of a conference, of a tier where you have two teams that are really, again, separating themselves from the pack. That's going to be a common trope in today's playoff episode, right? They might just be on a warpath, as you mentioned, straight to the finals.
I think I brought this up towards the very beginning of the season, actually. Jack-O-Lanterns, if I remember right, in season 16, I don't believe they did too well. If I remember right, they were actually one of the worst teams. So it's kind of nice to see Jack-O-Lanterns not only turning it around for the beginning of the season, but to 180, in one off season, and now they're tied or not tied, they're third overall in the tier, second in their conference. They've really made things kind of work this season.
No, and as this is our playoff
Yeah.
episode, I do kind of want to point out there's a couple teams we didn't talk about. Void in Solar Mountain, sitting at 27, 25, 13th place, leading that conference, so currently has a playoff spot. And then even more interesting, in Lunar Ember, Havarti Hustlers, 25 and 27, top of their conference. So sometimes, depending on the draw, you don't necessarily need to be in that top 10 standings just to get your chance.
My Chally team is actually in that conference with the Havarti Hustlers, so we had some things not go our way at the beginning, made some changes, and we have there's a chance that anyone can come out of that conference, or that division, right? 25 and 27, 23 and 29, and two teams at 22 and 30. So it's going to be crazy to watch as the conference matches or the division matches are all that we have left. It'll be really interesting to see if anyone makes like an 8-0 or a 7-1 run in these final two match days.
100%. I mean, a 3-game spread is easily something that can shift rapidly. And the fact that Ember Division is going to probably come down to the wire is something we're going to have to pay attention to after this week-long break.
Absolutely, man. Does anyone time what it really does is it gives every one of these teams 10 days, and whichever one of them is able to improve the most, take the most steps forward, essentially makes playoffs, right? So it's created a fascinating situation where anyone can control their destiny, and you have even more time to influence that.
True. Reeves, has anything really screamed down to you for the Jolly tier?
Oh, 100%. For me, it's always been like, not to backtrack, but with Fusion being first and all, they've helped out other tiers in the lower tiers, which might be the reason why you see my franchise's team being all in playoffs, because the Charlie team has always helped us, and they're number one, which helped us rise up. And I definitely have faith that they can pull it through. They are very good against pressure, but yeah, it'd be a cool one to watch.
For sure. And, one thing I just noticed, Steel from Metal, they're 16 and 4 in the last 5 match days. So, I mean, they were at one point 12 and 20. They've really stormed back. Now they're 28 and 24. Steel might be getting hot at the right time, like you said before, Rob, for a previous team. They might be turning things around. They might be storming in. We'll still have to pay attention really to Chally, see which team takes the chip. But as we kind of wrap up Chally here, let's jump into Rival. Rival is, as we've talked about before, it's kind of a runaway race here. Hammerheads in first at 48-4. Tort Reform 38-14 in second place, 10 games back in a two-way tie for third at 35-17. You've got Werewolves and Polar Ice in a three-way tie for fifth place at 33-19. You've got Carrots, Polaris, and Dalmatians. In eighth place, you've got Polar Bears. They're 32-20. In a two-way tie for ninth place, rounding out our top 10, we've got the Fangtooths and the Hot Wings at 31-21. And I did the math before. Hammerheads are only. Am I looking at the wrong lineup here?
59-9 is the greatest record of all time.
59-9. I know, but like what I was thinking of when I was looking at the. Did I miss? I must have missed a team here for the top 10. Good old me making graphics here. But no, what I was talking about was, if I remember right, Hammerheads to beat the winning percentage that Tempest made in season 4. I think they only need 8 wins out of the final 12 matches. So, I mean, going 8-4 for a team that's been going 48-4 doesn't seem like that big of a stretch. It seems like there's a good chance for this rival team to break that record.
Do they not play 64 games? Do they only play 60? Oh, no, never mind. Is that elite team played 68 games? I was trying to compare the numbers. 68 is a number. Fair enough. Yes, that's true. Interesting fact. Nice. One other thing is you look at that playoff race, right? In Lunar, it's the Hammerheads and then it's nobody else, right? The next 4 teams below them are all in the Solar Conference. So not only do they just have the best record, but it seems like they're in the weaker conference overall. And so they may just have a cakewalk to the finals.
They might, but you know, as you said, Lunar's kind of a runaway horse. Solar seems to be a lot of parity. Tort Reform, Werewolves, Polar Ice, and Carrots are all within 5 games. Oh, and Dalmatian. Sorry, I almost forgot there. So it's a 5-way race to see really who's going to be the best team out of Rival. And you know, Tech, as I'm looking at this here, do you foresee like one team in Solar really making a name for themselves in the playoffs here?
So it's tough. Like, I mean, there's several teams that I think have a shot. I mean, just kind of looking over some of their past performances, a team that I don't think is going to make playoffs but deserves a shout out here is Lacuna. They're the team that I casted, took 2 games off the Hammerheads, went 2-2 that series. Other than that, I mean, you were looking at some Solar teams, looking at someone like the Werewolves, who went 16-4 in their last 5 match days. Tort Reform 17-3. So if I had to pick anybody, I would say you got to look at those guys who are hot right now and playing really well. But anybody could come out of nowhere here.
Reeves, is there anybody in Rival that's really screaming out to you?
Apart from the first place team, there's not really anything that stands out to me. But the first place seed has everything
Unlucky.
to lose. And
I think we're
nothing
getting
to
some
gain.
lag again.
I mean, with that record, if they lose, it'll be bad. But if they pull off the win, that'll be expected. So if they lose, it's whoever beats them is who to look out for.
For sure. You know, but that kind of wraps up Rival here. We'll definitely have to keep an eye on this Hammerhead season as they seem to be on, you know, a beeline for that record. But as we kind of roll into the next tier here, Rob, do you want to take us into Vet?
Absolutely. Looking forward, you have your Titanium and my Supernova tied at 37-15 for first place. Next, you're going to have Lightning at 35-17. Gouda Gangsters, 1 game behind at 34-18. Peppers in 5th place at 31 and 21. Possessed and the Dobermans tied with a record of 30 and 22 in 6th place. The Gladiators sole possession of 8th at 29 and 23 in a 3-way tie for 9th at 28 and 24 between the Sea Devils, Singularity, and Ejaculus. One thing jumping out right away, you got the top 2 teams again, Solar and Lunar. So I really, really like to see that where you have that parity at the very, very top, where that final might be between the 2 best teams in the tier.
For sure, for sure. And, as I'm looking at this here, there wasn't a whole lot of movement on the top 10 for Vet as compared to some of the other tiers. You saw a lot of dashes there. As it really seems to be, everybody's really found their place. There's a little bit of competition at the back end of the season, but for the most part, this might be a good representation of what the playoffs are going to look like for Vet.
No, I mean, I'll jump in here, and this will be my chance to homer for the season or for this episode. But I'll bring it up because when we did the veteran breakdown a few weeks back, Cthulhu and Possessed were those top 2 teams. Cthulhu's fallen right out. Like they're not even in playoffs right now. I mean, they're only 1 game back. But it's interesting to see how quick a team can drop out, how quick a team can come back up. I'm hoping they can make a run to get back into playoffs and do some work in it. But you're right. It's hasn't changed much over the last week or so.
Yeah.
I mean, if the rankings are how things are going to be going, I feel this is the one tier I got the number 1 team, man. Let's go Supernova.
And if I may,
Reeps, you gonna homer for energy over
I
there?
do think that come from energy. I mean, I think energy is going to win anything that they're going to be in playoffs for. I think they have a chance, or well, not in rival. They're kind of down there this seasonally, but they're definitely nutty people. I will say with the playoffs, so the top 10, all the teams are so close ranking that it can really go anywhere this season. And that's what's so cool about this tier. Other tiers, you have someone far up in first, or you have 2 teams in one conference that tie up. But this one, they're all so close that you don't know what can happen.
You're right. But as we're, kind of wrapping up Vet here, I want to talk about this fantastic tier that Rob has been kind of dominating the conversation with for the last few weeks. This beautiful tier called Elite, where the sweaties really start to make a name for themselves here. In first place, you've got the Great Whites. They're 44 and 8. In second place, you've got the Sloths. They're 42 and 10. Third place, the Quasars, 34 and 18. And in a 3-way tie for fourth, you've got the Ghastly Goombas, Azathoth, and Thunder at 33 and 19. Tied for seventh, you've got Summoned and Vibranium. They're 32 and 20. And then tied for 10th at 30 and 22, you've got Fire and Anju. And I just want to point out, recently got a notification that Ghastly Goombas made another shift. They just cut a player right before trying to make a deep playoff run. And I'm not going to lie here, that kind of makes me nervous. Anytime a team is making a shift that late in the season, picking up a new player, can you really say they're reloading for the playoffs, or maybe they're making a last minute adjustment that could potentially hurt their chemistry? This could potentially be something that negatively affects their team. So we'll have to kind of pay attention and see if this Goombas team is really going to be the real deal.
Something to keep your eye out about that team as well is that they're not making that move because they want to, boss. They're making it because they have to. They have the worst record in all of the top 10 of Elite in their last 5 match days at just 11 and 9, right? So for a team that's in the top 5 to be 11 and 9 in their last 5 means that they had to be that much better earlier on, right? And so they've begun to at least slow down a bit, and only time will tell, but maybe they pick up that pace with this move here.
Yeah, we'll see. They definitely haven't been the same. They were rocking it earlier on the season, and they've made some pretty questionable shifts at the be request at one of their players. So we'll kind of see how that plays out here. Tech 4, how your Azathoth team seems to be performing pretty solidly at the back end of the season.
Yeah, I mean, as long as they don't play on stream, I feel like they do pretty good. Every time they're on stream, they go 2-2. I mean, they were on stream both matches this last week. Win against the Knights, 2-2 them, then win against the Casers, win 2-2 against them. So kind of rough games, honestly, when we're trying to make a run. But really happy where they are. Really happy with how they're playing. Shout out to old Greg. Guy scares the hell out of me whenever I see him do anything. But like, he is improving so fast and has made some seriously clutch plays for us down the stretch.
Also, as Chulane mentioned, shout out Gelato for going 14-6 to sneak into a playoff spot in their last 5. They're 26-26 right now, so they were 12-20 and have really pushed back. So big moves coming from Gelato to snag a playoff spot, and they're clear by 4 games of one of those wildcard teams. So they might be here to stay. Good job for them. Also, shout out my Quasars, man. Gotta give him love. If I'm gonna homer any team, it might as well be the one I actually play for, you know.
Hey, totally understandable. I do want to give a shout out as well to the Great Whites. They're 44-8, and what's wild is between the elite and the rival teams, that Shark Attack is currently rocking a 92-12 record, which is just absurd. Like, I can't believe that their best 2 teams in their franchise are just rocking it, carrying that franchise's win percentage right now.
You must have a crazy franchise if you have a higher win percentage than that one. If you are if you have a higher win percentage than a franchise that has 2 teams combined for 92-12, your franchise must be doing something right.
I don't know.
Anyway, moving on to Master over here for you guys. We're going to have our top 10 standings kicking off with the Basilisks at 35-17. The Blues right behind them, just 1 game back at 34-18. 2 games behind them, you have the Feta Forgers at 32-20, and then you have a 3-way tie at 31-21 between Glacier Mint, Oblivion, and Stampede. Shout out Jackson. Blackout right behind them in 7th at 30-22, and then you have 8th, 27-25 Tempests, 26-26 Orion in 9th, and rounding out our top 10, you have the Spectres at 25-27. A lot of parity up there at the top, right? Teams, number 1 through number 7 are all within 5 games of each other. So that is a lot of teams being...
Oh, Rob, I think we lost you there.
I'm back. Don't worry about it. That is a lot of teams being at least 8 games over 500.
Well, I'll jump in here real quick until we get Rob back. One thing that kind of jumps out to me in this tier, Helicorprians, 23-29. Generally, you'd look at that and say, okay, it's not quite the season you want, but it's not too bad. Like, we're totally fine with that. Keep in mind, they won the championship the last 3 seasons in a row. So, interesting opportunity for them being able, or everybody else rather, if they can keep Helicorprians out of playoffs, then we'll have a new master champion this year.
Yeah, and something I want to point out as well, Tempest going 12-8 in their back 5. As you saw in the top 10 standings list, they have jumped up into that 8th spot and just barely squeaked into that last playoff spot. So they have really made solid progress to kind of, at the back end of the season, really just steal a spot that probably shouldn't have been theirs to begin with. Rob, are you back?
I am
Yay,
indeed back.
let's go.
Kind of piggybacking off what you're saying, right? Teams either are hot or cold at the end of the season, and what you see is these teams in 2nd and 3rd in Master right now are both 10-10 in their last 20. So the Blues and the Feta Forgers, despite being the number 2 and number 3 seed, they were far ahead of the pack and have kind of slowed down a bit, right? So it's going to be interesting to see if they can get that momentum back as playoffs draw close.
Reeves, anything really screaming out to you for the Master tier?
Yeah, to piggyback on what he said about how people can be hot or cold in the end of the season, pretty much if you think about it, if Tempest and Bassex go up and up, one sweep could tie them. So pretty much one match night can like settle the difference in between the entire tier. So it's one of those tiers again, we don't know anything that could happen because again, the closest wins are within 6 games within the top 7, and the top is not far behind.
All right, that kind of wraps up Master here for us, though. Let's jump into Prem, our final tier of the night for the top 10 standings before we really start getting into some, more of the meat and potatoes of our stream here. Tied for first place, we've got the Orcas and the Fairies at 35 and 17. Tied for second at 30 and 22, we've got the Reapers and the Hurricanes. Tied for fifth place at 29 and 23, we've got the Megalodons and Interstellar. In seventh place at 28 and 24, we've got Beck. Or sorry, oh yeah, it is Beck. I'm sorry, I'm getting all sideways here. In eighth place at 25 and 27, we've got the Gummy Bears. In ninth place at 21 and 31, we've got Meng Po. And in 10th place at 18 and 34, we've got Capybaras.
So again, right, you're noticing the common theme with these higher level tiers, which is that there's a lot more parity going on. Because as you get better at the game, it's harder to separate yourself from others because everyone else can do everything too. So at the top here, right, all your teams between number 1 and number 7 are within 7 matches of each other, right? Like one match day, number 1 and number 7 could swap if a 4-0 goes wrong. So it's really fun to watch these top tiers, seeing who can grind out a couple of these wins when nothing is really given to you at this point.
And speaking of that parity, so Lunar is pretty well locked up. Gummy Bears are 4 games ahead of Meng Po. And if I remember right, they already have the split difference in standings. They've played each other earlier. But Beck and Interstellar are only 2 and 1 games back, respectively, from Hurricanes and Solar. So Solar is totally wide open for that last playoff spot. And I don't know how many more match days does Premier have at this point.
Just one.
One more match day could literally mean the difference between Hurricanes locking it up or Interstellar or Beck stealing it. So we'll definitely have to pay attention to that score reporting and see who wants it more. Tech, you're awfully quiet over there, man. Not a lot for Prem?
No, listen, these guys are really good at the game. I'm really not. I don't pay a lot of attention as an Elite 2 AMI team. I'm not going to lie to you. You guys are all better than me. Like, you're all great. That's all I got.
Hey, fair enough. I know that, quite frankly, I could not last for 5 seconds in any of these lobbies, but we'll definitely have to pay attention to Premier as we go forward. But as we kind of wrap up our top 10 standings, let's jump into our exclusive 8 clips of the week, your submitted clips, and see who we think is going to be our best clip of the week.
Won't become some falling soldier. I'm slowly losing my composure. I can feel them taking over now. I can feel them taking over.
Touch. I am Reapers there for the redirect center, but the Toadies cut out. Their counterattack immediately eliminated with that demo. Hey, come on! You're talking about clip of the week. Look at this. He pancakes it off the backboard. He pinches it, gets up, gets the reset, and places it top left.
Never be touched ever. I'm cold, I'm frozen in time, holding the line, taking back what is supposed to be mine. I'm done with the shine, I creep in the dark. The only thing left beating's my heart. Give me one more reason to start. And if they come in to stay, I never do, but I pray. Get under my feet, under my skin, and take me away.
You know, fantastic clip submitted this week for the exclusive 8, as always. Actually, normally Hannon runs our exclamation point vote system here. I don't know. Mr. Producer, I know they can't hear you, but are we rocking it with the vote in Twitch? Or are we rocking it with the vote in Discord this week? All right, we're gonna have to do it in Discord this week, so I will have that uploaded after the stream today. The video will be put into Vote Tech. You're not even in the video this week, Tech 4. What the heck, man?
I'm still gonna get votes.
Oh God. But like I was saying, I will throw it in Discord for the voting system. We'll do it through the way we used to do it, just for this week, and then we'll go from there. But let's jump into our prospect playoff picture. You know, the season just ended. We pretty much have everything squared away. I know there's a little bit of a kerfuffle in who's the number 1 seed out of prospect. So my bracket may not accurately reflect prospect entirely, but as we get it pulled up here, so for me, I have the Detention Demons beating the Beagles in the entry game for Solar. Whiskey Business taking care of business against the Detention Demons, and then Fruit Salad upsetting against Undead. Then I have, in my personal opinion, from a lot of footage I've been watching, I think Fruit Salad's going to be able to beat out Whiskey Business and take the take the seed for Solar, make it to the finals. And then for Lunar, I have Pepperoni Pizza beating out the Barbarians, Monster Misfits beating out Pepperoni Pizza, Pulse beating out Dark Matter, Pulse beating out Monster Misfits, and then Pulse taking the cake against Fruit Salad to win it all. Now, Rob, I know your bracket does not reflect the same way mine does, but I have a hard time putting any 1 seed in the finals. It never seems to work out, right? Like 1 seeds always seem to get knocked out pretty early. I don't know if it's just there's something about it, but oh my goodness, I am receiving word that 2 of Fruit Salad's roster will be on vacation during the playoffs. I am that bracket's going to be busted.
That is not necessarily true. There is speculation going around that's not 100% confirmed.
Okay. Well, here's hoping that I'm not totally wrong.
I don't mind the bracket, right? Like, I think there's a ton of really interesting matchups that are going to be going on. You're talking about that Pulse first, Dark Matter one, right? Hopping in right in the quarters. I think that is going to be... I legitimately believe that the winner of that matchup is going to win Prospect. I think that Pulse and... I mean, I may be a homer, right? But Dark Matter's 3 games back from a 1 seed without their arguably best player playing in Chally for 8 matches. having some players miss here and there. And so they're 3 games back, one of the best teams in the tier. They 2-2'd Pulse last time they played. It's going to be fascinating. I really genuinely believe that those 2 teams are the 2 that will show up in playoffs, the 2 that have the statistics to back it up, and I think it'll be whoever wins that one matchup is just taking the entire tier.
Before we really start dissecting a lot of these matchups, let's get Rob's bracket up on the screen here so that we can just kind of point out some of the few differences that he had here. Rob, you had Whiskey Business making it to the finals.
I did. I just think that at the end of the day, they've been performing exceptionally for the entire season, right? You got Ari there, the homie. Ethan is my prospect captain. Wanted me to give Ari a little shout out. He's good, right? Contender promo, played him last season, so he's gonna be taking that team through a little bit. I don't know. It's gonna be fascinating. There's a ton of crazy matchups. It's hard to break this down without diving into any individual matchup too much, because I think they kind of play into each other with the reason that anything was picked. Essentially, there is a ton of talent, a ton of ease split evenly throughout the entire tier, and I am super, super excited to watch it play out.
Reeves, I've seen you guys play a fair bit these last couple weeks, and you guys really, in my personal opinion, look like the team to beat, especially out of Lunar here. How are you guys feeling going into these playoffs, and how do you feel about your opening matchup against Dark Matter?
So I'm not sure if you're aware, during the last week of matchups, we had a roster change. And we did fairly well with the new roster change against some of the teams we held first, even with that. I definitely think that the highest competition is going to be like Dark Matter, Misfits, and on our side, it'll definitely be a tough matchup, but I think that we can definitely handle it because we've been doing extra training together as a team and individually with our new teammate. And because of our teammate, we've definitely been able to do some extra spicy things. And I wish Dark Matter good luck, and I cannot wait to face them. I know we all cannot face them. That is, if it is that way, because I don't know how if we're first seed or Misfits is first seed, but whatever the matchup is, it'll be a fun bracket on Lunar for sure. And then I think as far as Solar goes, I personally think that Whiskey Business is going to make it to the end pretty easily. And then that'll be a good matchup too.
For sure. And Tech, before I start throwing a lot of questions at you here, who do you have making it out of Prospect and taking the chip this season?
Yeah, so I'll talk through this a little bit because I also have a bracket sitting in front of me. I wasn't able to get it to you guys in time, but there's a lot of really interesting matchups right now. I was going off the more updated one in team standings, which has Pulse sitting at first place. However, I have Munster Misfits beating Dark Matter to go into the semifinals in Lunar. I have Pulse beating Pizza to go into the semifinals. But I have Munster Misfits going into the finals from the Lunar side. I think Pulse is an incredible team. They're very lucky, I think, that they have this whole entire week off to practice with their new lineup. A lineup change this late in the season can be very rough, and I mean, NV leaving, one of the better players in Prospect, in my opinion. So that's why I have Munster Misfits kind of coming out there. On the Solar side of things, I see in chats that we're underappreciating Undead a little bit. I actually have Undead beating Fruit Salad going in the the semi-finals there, and then I have Whiskey Business actually just sweeping the entire side of the bracket going into the finals, and then my final prediction would be Munster Misfits over Whiskey. Over Whiskey 4-2.
You have both 1 seeds making it to the finals?
It's insane. I would never pick that, but like the good thing on my bracket, Munster Misfit is the 2, so maybe I get a little out there, but like it's still sketchy.
And see, that was my problem when I was making these. Well, at least for my bracket, was I have a hard time trusting one seeds. It seems to be for RSC that one seeds. I don't know if they just take their foot off the gas as soon as they hit the playoffs, or like maybe there's some mental behind knowing that they're expected to perform. But I know at least for season 15, there was a Swiss Swindlers team who came out of nowhere in the 8th seed and knocked out a almost record-setting season from the Wasps of the Swarm that season. And it was just kind of a telltale thing that for some reason one seeds just crumble like a bad Jenga tower right in the first round. So I for sure I'm kind of sketch. I'm kind of nervous with one seeds.
Oh, me as well. I mean, especially in these bigger tiers, not that prospect's big, but there's enough rounds where if you're the one seed, you come in. I mean, looking at this situation, what I'm looking at is Pulse plays the winner of Pepperoni Pizza versus Barbarians. It's very easy to go into the playoffs and say, okay, I need to worry about Munster Misfits or Dark Matter. And then all of a sudden, some random team comes up that they haven't prepared for, and they're just not even thinking about that match. And then it just goes away way too quickly. I don't think that's going to happen here, but I've seen it happen so many times in the past.
One
And-
thing I do.
Oh, no, sorry. Go ahead, Rob. Go ahead, Rob.
One thing that I do want to add in, by the way, is that if we are correct and Dark Matter and Pulse are playing in the first round, that would mean that if Barbarians beats Pepperoni Pizza, which I think that they will, Barbarians are actually 6-2 this season against the Munster Misfits. So even though the Munster Misfits have all of their numbers look better, right? They have more wins. They've performed better the whole season. Their offensive statistics, defensive statistics, they appear to be the better team. It is worth noting that the Barbarians are 6-2. Right? That's not a small sample size either. That's 2 match days where you average a 3-1. Right? So if the Barbarians are able to get past Pepperoni and then get to the Munster Misfits, they might just be in the semis. They might just have that team's number. It could be a matchup thing, but it's definitely something worth noting. Also, shout out to my prospect captain, Ethan, or Iwukami, for a few of these numbers I've been using.
If a 5th seed can make it to the semifinals, that'll be wild. But Tech, something that differentiates between our between our two brackets and how we're kind of thinking about all this is how the first seed is getting classified for Lunar. Maybe my understanding is wrong here, but to my understanding, it goes they're split, how they played against each other during the season, their conference, then division play, then goals. And to my knowledge, maybe I'm wrong here, but Munster Misfits and Pulse are split 2-2. Actually, Reeps, you're on Pulse. I mean, have you guys only played once or twice, or how'd that work?
Because they are in the opposite division in our conference, we only faced them once, and we did 2-2 them. Yeah.
Right. So it would then go to conference and division, right? So it'd be conference tied, 33-19. Division would be 29-3 for Munster, 20-12 for Pulse. So, I mean, to my knowledge, Munster Misfits would be the number 1 seed, right?
I don't know if this is true or not, but whenever someone replied, one of the staff, I believe, they said that they use just common opponents because the matchups in division are unfairly different.
Oh.
And if it does go by like just same opponents, then we do take first. If that's how it goes.
I was thinking that
honestly
was somewhere
don't
in there
know.
as well. I'm not entirely sure. I'm not going to pull up the rules and use Control F to try to figure it out here, but I think that is somewhere in there.
You don't want to look through, 400 pages of.
I never learned how to read.
bylaws. Oh man,
If Pulse
think,
is the 1 seed, I think that is the best thing that could have happened for the Munster Misfits. I mean, not really, because then they have to play against my prospect team, and Dark Matter is nothing to mess with, right? But like, if you're the Munster Misfits, you might rather play a team that has a little bit, performed a little bit better throughout the season, even though. Like, if you're going to play a team that has a worse record but is 6-2 against you, that's not a way to kick off your playoff run, right? So they are going to be looking at a harder road, but maybe not for them matchup-wise.
And shout out to Pokey Ninja who kind of pointed this out. So the wild card match um, happens only 2 days before the quarterfinals. Um, if you're looking at coming into your game fresh, you might actually want to play in that wild card game. So you've had a game, a real RSC match, just 2 days before going into the quarterfinals. Being that one seed, you're going to be playing a team that just played 2 days ago without you having a real match for over a week. That's you might much rather be if you're going to be in not playing in that first game. You might rather be the second or third seed that doesn't have to play a team coming off that.
This is starting to look like it could end up being the perfect storm against the Munster Misfits. Like, and I'm not trying to downplay any one team being successful. You know, they had a great season, but if they are going to be playing against potentially a Barbarians team who's going to have recently played, who went 6-2 against them in 2 match days, that realistically could set themselves up for failure here.
Tulane gave us a bunch of information here, which is that if teams within the same division have the same regular season win percentage, ties between the team will be resolved using the following tiebreakers: head-to-head record, which they're even, record against in-division opponents. So yeah, then it would be that, but maybe we're using common opponents instead.
Well, that also says if teams within the same division, they're in separate divisions, I believe.
Yeah, that's true. That's the same conference. If teams within.
Reeps, I guess I'll ask you, what team would you rather play in the opening round? Would you rather play the Dark Matter, who are, you know, a very solid team, they're 30-22, or would you rather play the winner between the Pepperoni Pizzas and the Barbarians?
Personally, I think we would rather Dark Matter, but that's just because I believe that Dark Matter is a better team and we want the best competition there is, and that would be a better way to warm up throughout the entire playoffs rather than because we can't obviously we're top 2, we can't go into the wild card, so
Yeah.
we don't want people coming in fresh and hot. When we have scrims against like Charlie teams or plus, but I personally would feel Dark Matter is a bit better of opponent to start with. Be more interesting
I
that
think
way.
that'll also be kind of an important thing. I wonder. So we didn't really do this for Rival, and we really didn't do this for Elite that often. But Tech, I guess for you guys in Contender, when you guys are warming up for important match nights, do you guys go up a tier to warm up against? Like, do you ask your prospect team to come in and give you guys the run through, or?
Yeah, so we haven't yet, but this season I absolutely expect to. The reason why we hadn't in the past is like last season, all 7 of my teams made playoffs. So I didn't want to take my prospect team and have them play my contender team if that didn't set them up for their game. But this season for playoffs, I absolutely expect us to reach out to our prospect team because they'll have the night off. They didn't make playoffs, and see if they can help us out.
I wonder, Reeps, that actually might be super beneficial for you guys going into this going into the playoffs, especially if you guys can go against your Chally team, or you know, if we can get a ragtag group together again like we did with the AMI guys, where we can get maybe myself, Nero, and a couple other upper tier players, we might be able to get you guys warmed up pretty nicely for the playoffs.
I just meant like we tend to play a
Yeah.
lot off nights, so we'll probably scrim an extra 2 to 3 times a week together, especially this off week. That's our plan, to play as much as that we can together with our new teammate. And we've already faced a Charlie team and beat them. Like I believe that night was like 7-2 wins wise. And we face as many Charlie teams as we can. That's pretty much our goal right now.
Which Chally team
next
did you
couple
beat?
weeks.
You should call them out by name, just to instigate.
I believe it was Penny Patrol. They're in the middle
Oh,
of 24.
Hoovian. Oh my.
The
That's
public
Hoovian's
shame.
team, right?
Yeah.
I think so.
I'm an instigator and I love it.
Oh, that's good. Next time I see Hubie, I'm gonna have to throw some flack there. Absolutely, 100%. Um, I do wonder if we kind of get the matchups that we expect, more based on Tech 4's bracket. What is the lowest seed we've realistically seen win a chip out of prospect recently? I mean, there's only 5 seeds, so there has to have been a 5th seed within the last couple of years, right? That's won it, or is that? I guess I don't know. Is that wild or is that normal?
I don't know, to be honest with you.
So I can tell you, last season, Iron. Oh no, never mind. I'm looking at the wrong number. They were number 1 seed. I'm a big dummy.
It happens. Because personally, right? Like I don't like saying the 1 seed's gonna win, but realistically, there's got to be a seed cutoff where you're like, hey, this seed's there. If they make a magical run, it's gonna be nice, but they're not likely to win it. I wonder if it's gonna be 5 or if it's gonna be 4. Like where that line drops off. Do you guys realistically see Beagles or Barbarians, the 5 seeds, winning it all?
So the Barbarians are the ones who I'd give that chance to, right? If I had to bet on some team that was not like a top 3 seed making this run, it would be them. Pardon me while I pull up their exact stats on the funky, wonderful RSC app that shows you so much about all of the teams. If you go look at the Barbarians, they are actually, their offense is stunning. So first of all, they lead the entire tier in saves. Second of all, they also lead the entire tier in shooting percentage. And so those two things going hand in hand, among anything else, right? That means that they are able to stop you from scoring and score more efficiently than you. And so depending on what happens around that, right? Those two factors could be everything that you need to make that run.
Yeah, for sure. I think I really do. This just kind of makes me want to think more about getting a lower tier team to play like a better tier team. Like if we could get the winner of the prospect team at some point to play against like a low end playoff team from Chally, I think that would be great content. But we'll
Potentially a
have to.
pre-jump bracket, a pre-jump
Ooh,
gauntlet, if you will.
ooh,
These are
that'd be
things to
solid.
ponder. I think there's a lot of potential with an idea here.
Do you guys Tech 4 Reaps? Do you guys have any other comments here for prospect, or do you think it's about time for trivia?
I would say one last thing. I wish Prospect all the best. Have an amazing last playoffs, and the best person wins it all. Let's have
Oh,
fun.
that's no. I was hoping it'd be like some Marshawn Lynch level call out, like
Yeah,
all the best
Dark
for it, but
Matter's
we're about to
winning
steamroll.
everything. Yeah, I don't know why no one else took that opportunity. My prospect team, 3 games back from the 1 seed, missed their best player for 8 matches. Come on, man, it's not even close. Dark Matter's taking it all. Steamrolling playoffs. You can write it up
Oh
right now.
man,
Give me the
Rob,
trophy. Give him a.
I'm
No.
just putting it out there right now. You have a team to
Nah,
play for,
we just play nice because we already know we're gonna
Someone's
win.
got to talk the talk.
Rob. You have a team to play for. I don't. I'm gonna make it my mission to help this Pulse team take the dub.
Yeah.
Hey, man.
Well, I'd say good luck as well. I mean, Reeves, you're here. Good luck to you. I know the playoff hunt is not exactly easy, but it's very enjoyable. If you want content, the only thing I can kind of give you is I'll call out Ari directly and say, according to my bracket, he loses finals 2 seasons in a row.
oh, oh
And according to
man.
mine,
I
he
mean,
loses
I
finals
didn't even
2
recognize
seasons in a row to the
that.
same person. Oh my goodness.
Oh god.
Yikes. Love you, Ari.
Love you, Ari, but not as much safety,
I
so.
I think that is the best thing to potentially end the prospect discussion on. Rob, let's get rolling in here to your trivia.
Alrighty, so starting us off, this is kind of a 3-part question. The first one. So, which team do we think that has the highest team-wide average SBV in Prospect, Contender, and AMI? As we're going to get into those two, but starting with Prospect, what do we think has the highest team-wide SBV?
Is it dark matter?
I would. No, it's not. I would be really cool if
Okay.
it was, though.
I thought you set up a question for your guys. Oh my god.
I'll give you 5. Well, good. Let's get some guesses. What are we rocking?
Whew. That's the one. Yeah, that's tough. I'm gonna throw out Pulse.
I don't think it's Pulse because of our roster change. If it was our original roster, we probably would be number 1. So I don't think it's us, honestly. Just because our teammate came from a team that was lower, I think at the very bottom of the totem pole, so that brought down that SPV.
I
Who is
will
it,
actually
I'd say
say that you
Misfits.
are incorrect. It is Pulse. The player that you acquired has a 61 SPV.
Yeah, I was gonna
So
say
it
White
actually-
Bear's way
Wow.
up there.
Yeah, White Bear, I believe he leads the tier in saves,
Yep.
or he did at one point at least. So Pulse is that for Prospect. For Contender, what are we thinking? And that's so the team-wide SPV for Pulse is a 65.7. So as an average, that team is essentially, let's see, what would that be good for? The 17th best player in the tier, right? So that's, or most efficient numbers-wise. So that's a lot of firepower that they're operating with. What do we think it is for Contender?
It's got to be Dagon, right?
It is indeed Dagon at a whopping 75.2. Good for second
the
in all of
average?
RSC. Yep, the average
Oh my
SPV of
God.
Dagon is 75.2. Second in all of RSC behind just that rival team. That is what, 48-4 now? So, I mean, they're 43-9, so the record's not far behind. But, and then for AMI, who do we think that it's going to be?
See, for me, it's between Cathil and Brass. I'm gonna go Brass.
I'm homering. I'm saying it's a last. I know it's not, but it's, you know what? Big shout out. Raichu, Kakashi, Super Threes, Casca. Come on. I got to give the homies a shout out.
It's a
I love
solid
Super
guess.
Threes. He was on my team last season, actually. And then, Reeps, you got to guess it all? Fair enough. It is
I'm holding
actually
for Elastic.
Cathilla. The only person who did not homer is the one who should have. Ironic. At a 62.5. So not to turn this into a kind of Mythos Glaze session, but who is the only player to have both a 70 SPV in Prospect and Contender this season?
I feel like that's Tech. I feel like it's Tech 4 because he got called up for like one game, didn't you?
Yeah, I had a good game in Prospect.
It is Tech 4. A whopping one game with like a 90 SPV. Shout out Tech.
So, funny story. Tuesday League, I
Tear-breaker.
also got called up for a single game in Prospect, and I had an IDR of 156.
This is the greatest single game Prospect player of all time. You get to game 7 of Prospect Tech, and you better sub yourself in.
Yeah, it's already over.
Oh, God.
So this is one that is also really interesting. What do we think that the best winning percentage season a team has ever had in Contender is? Like, what's the
I
best
have
season
no
in Contender
idea.
history?
I'm gonna throw 88% out.
I think
Yeah, Tech can't
Tempest
guess because he
in-
knows.
Yeah,
think
I've been
Tempest-
following this pretty much all season. So
I know it can't be above 86 because I believe that's the winning percentage for Tempest for Elite, which is the greatest winning percentage ever for any
Yeah, that
in
Myths
any
team.
tier. I don't 80%.
It is 82.69 at 43-9, which is the exact record that Dagon has right now with one match day remaining.
So they just need to go greater than 2-2, right?
3-1 is 75%, which will drop it. So they need to go 4-0 to break it.
Oh,
And if they go 4-0, they will have put together the greatest regular season contender team of all time, or season of all time, which is definitely something to watch. Shout out to both the Tech 4's amateur and contender teams for dominating the numbers out there.
for sure, for
That
sure.
wraps up Rob's RC trivia.
Thanks, Rob.
Yeah, I gotcha.
As you know, as we kind of wrap this up here, we'll get a little bit more into Amy and Tendi. We kind of talked about it a little bit earlier with the Amy standings, and I kind of want to go into their first. Brass, they stayed in first place, right? They're 34-18. They stayed in second, or Cathilla stayed in second. They're 30-22. I just really want to point out how impressive this elastic run is. Like, yes, I know they 4-0'd Faye, a team that was being put back together as Encreds is really just trying to figure out what to do for next season. But the fact that Elastic 3-1'd the Brass the match night before tells you that yes, even though they're 29-23, they're potentially going to take it all. I have a good feeling that there's a chance they could flare up and continue being as hot as they are and take the chip.
Yeah, I mean, for me, any of these 5 teams that are within contention all have a serious shot of making it. I watch Cathilla very closely. They'll have a night where they 4-0 Brass, and all of a sudden it gets real spicy in GM chat. And then I'll also watch a stream where they 2-2 Faye, where it's like they win game 1 6-1, and then all of a sudden they just get blown out game 2 and 3. So Amy this season to me is so close, and I've played in Amy the last couple of seasons. I haven't seen anything like this. This playoff run is going to be incredible.
So kind of piggybacking off that, the thing that I find most fascinating about Amy this season is that there are 3 players who are individually dominating for statistically there's more than anyone else. You have Eagle, Eagle 20X, right? So we'll call him Eagle with an 88 SPV, Raichu with a 91, and your girl's my side hoe with a 103. All of them putting up crazy stats, at least 55 goals apiece and at least 30 assists apiece. So just crazy numbers. But none of these 3 players who have at least essentially a 15 higher SBV than anyone else in the tier are actually on the number 1 team, Brass. The guy in 4th is, but again, that's a drop off from an SPV of 88 to 74. So it's fascinating to see that you have these 3 players putting up just monster seasons, and none of them, especially in the lower tier, have actually led to the number 1 seed. And so the question that I have for you guys is that in a lot of traditional sports, and I think Rocket League as well, when you get to the playoffs, you start leaning on your stars a little bit more. Do you guys think that with the 2, 3, and 4 seed seeming to have the quote-unquote brightest stars, but the number 1 seed having 4 more wins than everyone else, what do you weigh more as this time comes around, playoff time?
I think for me, I look at the entire team. I mean, when you look at a solid rotation, tell you what, I mean, if I want a homer and look at just Cathella, you can talk about, hey, your girl, my side hoe, has the ball near the enemy net. I'm really happy. He bangs it off the crossbar, and then all of a sudden I need to count on one of my other 2 players to save. I shout out to all 3 of my players. I think they're fantastic, but when you have that 2 player and realistically Furion Shots as the number 2 for Brass does not get enough credit, does not get talked about. But having that second player that can just, if something bad happens, I can just bail this entire team out is so massive. And to me, I would much rather have the team with 2 players that are top notch, maybe not MVP candidates, but top notch players that can rely on each other.
Well, and I don't think there's any right answer here because at the for Rival at least, I can speak to Rival a little bit easier because Rival has last season the Matsu Marauders won, and I don't think anybody above 65 SPV was on that team. I don't think anybody was up there for SPV, but I know that for myself and Cloudy and for Not Kaido, I don't believe any of us actually made a super deep. I could be wrong. I don't think any of us made a super deep playoff run last season. So I definitely think it's going to be. It really is going to be that who's got the best team as compared to who's got the best individual player.
I think so. This is where I think this becomes really interesting, right? Is for tiers above, like Amy, I agree 1,000,000%. But what we've seen for, and I think this is what Tech was getting at for the last few seasons in Amy, it's kind of just been like there's there's a couple players who just steamroll the tier because depending on the skill level of amateur on any given season, right? You're talking about um Diamond 2 maybe, right? And so you can improve so rapidly through one of those seasons. And as we've seen a lot, playing in a organized league fosters that growth. So one player can suddenly just go from, I mean, your girl's my side hoe, right? Went to hit like 1100, 1200 in twos and threes. And so you're seeing these players just go berserk essentially, and that's why this Amy season is so fascinating, is because you have so many doing that. um I think that there's not that same baseline of consistency where one player can't go through three, and I think that's where the Amy aspect of this question really comes in, because they're with that lower skill level, right? It's not it's there's more room for domination essentially.
No, I totally agree. And when you look at the bottom of rosters, and I'm not trying to pick on anybody or whatever, but because Ami's a tier with no bottom. Anybody can play in this league, and I think that's fantastic. But what that means is your difference in skill level between your top player and your bottom player is so wide that, like I was saying earlier, sometimes it's great to have the ball, your best player shooting the ball, but if he misses, now all of a sudden there's a counterattack on the other side, and you're looking at somebody who signs on, plays half a scrims, and then plays in the matches, and that's all the Rocket League they might play the entire week. And they're just not quite as ready to deal with it.
I think that leads into a really interesting discussion I've been having with a lot of my teams as we kind of lean into playoffs, which is that you can lose a Rocket League game by scoring 9 goals, right? Like you might lose 9-10, but you cannot lose a game if you do not get scored on.
Yep.
No matter what, might be a 20-minute OT, someone might have to own goal, but if you just simply if they score 0 goals on you, there's not a way to lose. And so that prioritization of defense, right? And I think that's where this, if your girl is my side hoe, Raichu or Eagle, take that step and say, I'm not going to allow my team to get scored on because I'm simply the best player in the lobby. That's, I think, where this becomes a fascinating discussion, right? Because you might have 2 great players on one team and 1 MVP on another, and they might pass, shoot, right, do whatever. But if they can't get that shot past these, frankly, I think 3 players are going to go to prospect potentially. And so you're talking about 3 prospect players in amateur. Will they be able to be enough of a wall to where it doesn't matter if you have a whole team, right? If you don't get scored on, it's done for. So I guess we could talk in circles about this forever. So moving past that point, I guess.
I do want to. Sorry, I do want to
Yeah, go
piggyback
ahead,
off of what
boss.
you just said there.
Yeah.
I do want to. There were 3 double promos last season from Amy to Prospect. There was Sinbri, Chelsea Acacia, and our legendary producer tonight, Mr. Avex Inceptions himself. Double promoed from Amy to Prospect. So shout out to our producer here. Just want to give him a quick shout
Zach
out.
the Bull.
Did he get? Oh, so we had 4 double promos then. That's
I
insane.
am right now going to pull up last season's SPV sheet to see exactly what that is, just to kind of compare the players that we're discussing now to see if they're on that route to double promo potentially.
Reeves, while he's looking that up there, is there, I guess for you in Prospect, do you expect a single player to really dominate, or do you prefer, or do you think teams play better, I guess, for your tier?
I think my tier is the turning point where the bottom of the tier typically relies on 1 to 2 people. and a few top teams typically have 3 people playing together. I think the best example of that was probably last season with what is now Fruit Salad, but the Old Iron. They played all 3 together pretty well. No one else could really do that this season. I think there's 2 or 3 teams that use all 3 of their members, and I think that's the one tier where it like switches depending on your upper or bottom skill level.
Hey, fair enough.
Just so everyone knows, Sinbri, Chelsea, and Zach the Bull all double promoed with an SPV between 80 and 89. And the 3 players that we're discussing have SPVs of 88, 90, and 103. So all 3 of them are almost better or performing better than the #1 double promo last season. So like these AMI players are not even bottom of the tier prospect players, right? Like these guys are dominating. And so I don't know if and when we make our brackets, I think it's going to be incredibly difficult to pick because there's so many different play styles that can occur in a tier like this.
Before we really get too knee deep into AMI, we should kind of talk a little bit about Contender here. Granted, Contender I kind of think is, I mean, I think we're all kind of in agreement here that it's pretty straightforward, right? We all pretty much believe there's only really 2, maybe 3 teams competing for the chip this year.
I think it's a full 3. I don't
Full
think it's
3?
a maybe 3. I believe in all 3, but I do think that number kind of cuts off at 3. Yeah.
Do you think it's Dagon, Ionic, and Samurai, or do you think it's Dagon, Ionic, and
Yes.
Aluminum?
I agree that it's 3. I disagree on who. I think I'm going to talk a little more about aluminum later, but I think they're in contention.
Okay.
They kind of by definition have to be as the 1 seed in Solar anyway. But just so again, going off of this handy dandy RSC app that shows you some wonderful statistics for teams. This is where this gets crazy, right? So you go look at these top 2 contender teams, which are 14 and 17 games ahead of 4th place respectively. Dagon, first in points, goals, assists, shots, goal differential, goals against, assists against, shots against. And they're 3rd in points against and 2nd in shooting against. So there's only 3 stats they're not top 3 in. And you're like, man, how could anyone compete with that? And then you go look at Ionic and they're top 3 in the same number of stats. So those 2 teams are just dominating, right? Then you go look at the Samurai, and you're like, man, there can't be a 3rd team that dominates like that. Samurai, 3rd in points, 2nd in goals, 4th in assists, 2nd in shots, 4th in shooting percentage, 3rd in goal differential. And then they're top 7. This is something that neither of the other 2 teams can say. They're top 7 in every defensive stat. Granted, maybe you don't want to be higher up there in saves because that means you're allowing more pressure.
No one shoots.
So are you willing to adjust then your top teams and say there's 4 competing instead of just 3?
By definition, the #1 seed in Solar has to be competing, but like their statistical profile, while it is also very good, there's a few more.
Oh.
Back. Hey, what's up?
He's
Don't
back.
worry about
Hey,
it.
he's back.
There's a few more 4th, 6th. It's an ISP thing. There's a few more 4th, 6th, and 8th places in there, right? So like, don't get me wrong, they're looking great, but I mean, you look at those top 3 and the consistency of performing, they've just been day in, day out, been the best teams in the tier. They have the 3 best records in the last 5. Granted, 4th place is tied with them, but man, they just dominate in everything. You look at Dagon, and 3 of the top SPVs are on their team, right? Like, I don't know. It's fascinating. There's these 3 teams, and according to Tech, I guess let's hear about Aluminum, man. I want to hear the case for them.
Yeah, so I'm going to be incredibly real here, and it's going to come off. What I'm going to say is you're going to need to hear me out before you get all mad about this, because I'm going to say some things that are not nice. Aluminum, beginning of the season, I'm going to straight up say it, they were not good. They were kind of a garbage team. We scrimmed them twice, played them in the beginning of the season. between those 2 scrim days and between our match, we were 20-0 against them. And
Jesus.
I think that out of those 20 games, only like a couple of them were close. Now, fast forward, this is a team we have scrimmed quite a few times all season. They have worked their butts off. They have improved. Last time we scrimmed them, we were about 50% against them. They are just so much better. If you look at their records for their first several match days, I'm going to pull that up right now because this is incredibly interesting to me. Let me search aluminum. Let me spell it correctly. So they started off the season 0-4 against Dagon, 1-3 against Cheese Pizza, 1-3 against Devoured, 2-2 against Hippie Hunters, 1-3 against Samurai. So, I mean, just in those first 4 match days, they were so far behind. Had only won 3 games, or 4 games out of their first 16. All of a sudden now, coming back to being number 1 in their conference, their last 5 match days doesn't look amazing, but it's still solid at 13-7. But if you look at right before that, they were winning too. They're so much better than they were before. And those stats are down because of how they started the season. If you look at how they're playing right now, this is a solid team and should not be overlooked.
Fair enough.
Then Mike's follow-up question to you is, do you think that there's a team in Solar that can challenge them? Because they are in a weaker conference.
The way they're playing right now, no. I mean, obviously, we know anything can happen on any match night. Someone can knock them out. I mean, we 2-2 Cheese Pizza, and I mean, anything can happen. But
Hammerhead's 2-2'd Lacuna, man.
exactly. If they played one more game, who knows what happens there? But if I'm just looking at, if I was going to bet money, I'm not betting on anybody over aluminum from the
Yeah,
Solar.
I guess that's the question. Are you taking aluminum or the field? Like, would you bet on aluminum over all of the other teams combined?
Absolutely. Not even close.
Dope. And so I think that's fascinating, right? Because then you start to, if you're aluminum and you feel that way too, because if you're this confident about them, I bet they're even more confident, right? So if you're aluminum and you're 26-26, normally maybe out of playoffs, right? Like they would not be in the playoffs in Lunar, which is insane to me. So you have this team that, due to the circumstance, which frankly is fairly lucky, um, they're in a position to essentially have a cakewalk to the finals, and they need to win one series against a top 4 team to be a champion. And I think that's fascinating to note and to watch as we move forward.
Reeves, I mean, I wouldn't fault you for it, but how do you feel about your Tendy team, Ionic? How do you feel like they're going to be coming out of this lunar side of things, and how do you feel they're going to be doing as they work their way towards the chip? Special coaching? Yeah, I mean, you're right. If, quite frankly, if aluminum gets knocked out by Drakes or by Ice, it'll actually be a team with a losing record making it into the finals. So that'll be something kind of wild to look at.
I mean, and if we're going to be talking about those teams, right? You look at Ice, they're currently top 5 in every defensive stat. And you know what they say, right? Like, defense wins championships. So if you're Ice, even more so than your 26-26 aluminum, at 23 and at 23
So
and
hold on
29.
1 second. Reeves, are you muted in video?
No, he's not.
Okay.
You can see the little icon in the top right.
Oh, okay. Well, they were saying, the chat was saying they couldn't quite hear him. That's why I was asking. Oh, that's weird.
Unlucky. Well, would you like to say? Let me wrap this up, and then we can go back to what you were saying in just a moment. My apologies. Ice at 23 and 29, top 5 in every defensive statistic, feels fantastic, right, for them. They have not had the season that they want up to this point, but top 5 in defense. What did I just say, right? You can lose a game by scoring 10, 15 goals, but you cannot lose a game if you do not get scored on. So Ice has something going for him. Drake's, on the other hand, is actually not top 5 in any single statistic, not top 6 in any single statistic, except for saves. So they give up a lot of pressure. So, I mean, I would take Ice over Drake's despite the slightly worse record. And they, again, man, if their defense is that good, they have a serious shot at upsetting some of these people. Shout out Shoelane.
For sure. Reeps, do you want to go ahead and recap kind of what you were talking about there? Hopefully they'll be able to hear you this time
Recap.
through.
Yeah. So I first mentioned how I fully believe in Ionic. They have special coaching going on, and ever since that, they've skyrocketed, and they're going to be fighting hard. I also mentioned how Lunar,
When you say special coaching,
they're all top 3 in the conference. So
when you say special coaching, what do you mean by special coaching? I mean, maybe I'm at a lawsuit. You're not going to. Ooh.
That means that they found, like, they messaged Kev Pert or something, and it's fine. They have a good coach. That said, I would legitimately question the use of like an SSL plus level coach for. I mean, what ranks is our contender, right? Like,
I don't. I mean, you can question it, but it's apparently working, though, right? I mean, they're winning.
I suppose. Didn't they just won 3?
I don't know. As far to my knowledge, I can actually pull up the same graphics that I made for this week and just peek it. Let me see here. Let's see here. Contender.
They did just get 1-3'd by Dagon, but that's Dagon, so.
Yeah, that's.
Oh, so it should have been a 4-0 is what I hear.
Yeah, sorry, I was muted on the video. I also was playing in Prospect that week.
Also playing in Prospect.
Putting up a 90 SPB in the tier above, man. It's just
so casually.
Monster stats from Tech.
Like, I know they were complaining about some other players that need to be promoted, but apparently Tech needs to be moved to, like, Chally or something next season.
I'm going to IR myself if that happens.
My goodness. But I guess we'll go around the room here one last time. Do any of y'all have any other final words for Contender and how the playoffs are kind of shaping out?
Well, one thing that is interesting to note is that the only change that can happen on this final match day is if Ice 0-4s and Hippie Hunters 4-0s, and if Hippie Hunters would take the tiebreaker. That's the only playoff swap that could even occur in Contender. Otherwise, everything is locked, except for seeding, right? But the teams that will be making playoffs are locked. And touching base on AMI, just because I forgot to mention this at that point, there's also only one team that can move in or out of playoffs in AMI as well. So while there is still one match day, that only really makes a difference, other than seeding, to a couple teams here.
Reeves, do you have any final words here for the podcast?
My final words would be that it just looks like, based off of energies, all lower tier made it to playoffs. They're kind of running the lower tier right now, and hopefully throughout finals we can do the same.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Mr. Tech, the legend himself. What do you got?
I think I've said plenty about Contender. I also forgot to say it. I kind of went through the last match day in AMI, kind of made some predictions, and you're going to hate to hear this, but my predictions for playoffs from AMI is going to be number 1 seed Brass going in number 1, number 2 seed Cathilla going in number 2, number 4 seed Surprise going in number 3, and number 5 seed Rollers actually jumping in and taking that 4th spot. I don't think Elastic's going to make it. just due to matchups this coming match day.
Who do they play?
So interesting enough, Elastic plays Surprise, which obviously is that huge 3-4 matchup. And then Rollers actually gets to play Sacrifice, who's sitting down at 21-31 right now.
Yeah, if you're the Rollers then, and you get to... Yeah, man, if they at least 3-1, they essentially guarantee themselves a spot. Or it's close to it. I'm not going to... I don't have every
If the Rollers
statistical
3-1,
figures, but...
they'll be 30-26, which
Yes.
realistically speaking, if Elastic and Surprise even 2-2, Elastic guarantees the 3 spot and Surprise guarantees the 4 spot.
Correct.
So
do they get the tiebreaker?
So what I was looking
There'd
at
be
is
no
Rollers 3-1ing Sacrificed, Surprise 3-1ing Elastic. They both end on 30 wins. Rollers does have the tiebreaker over Elastic.
Okay. Well, it sounds like it's going to be a really
which one is
important week,
tiebreaker again? What
Head
stat?
to head is the first stat.
Okay. And just if you are looking at it / like have something up, what is the head-to-head on Surprise and Rollers?
We can tell you very quick. So every team plays each other twice. So we're looking at 2 different matchups here. First matchup, Rollers versus Surprise, was 2-2. So it's all going to come down to this second matchup. Was also a 2-2.
So then that would move to
goals.
Well, there's no conference.
And it moves all the way to goals because everyone plays each other twice.
Oh goodness! So then it really depends on what happens on this final match day, because if that 2-2, if they end up tied, right, then it really comes down to who scores more on this final match day. That's a really fascinating tiebreaker scenario for amateur.
For my final parting words, going last here, I'm going to do everything in my power to continue helping out the Elastic team to make sure Tech 4 is wrong. Because for the love of God, that would be really embarrassing to get to the final, the last second on the white line, the finish line, and just fall flat on your face. So 100%. Got a week and about a week and a half get prepped for this next matchup. We'll see how things go. But for everybody who's tuned in tonight, I've obviously stayed Boss Bradala. Name hasn't changed. Been the same bat face, same bat place. Rob returning as well, hanging out here with us, giving us the expert know-how. And thanks again to our guest tonight from Mr. Tech 4 and Impact Reaps. Reaps, good luck on your playoff run. Tech, good luck on your playoff run as well. Can't wait to see Tech play in the finals for both Contender and Prospect. But for those of you who've tuned in, thanks for watching. This has been week 10 of the pre-jump. Have a good night.
See myself standing on the edge, about to fall. Don't know if you like to see me out there beneath while I'm struggling to breathe on my own. I won't turn my back on you, 'cause your love's the only one I know. Just one more chance is all I need. I'll lift you up and set you free. I will take you right there. I will take you right there.